Welcome back to The Why. We just explored how new virtual worlds are changing our sense of place. And now we're looking at how virtual art is changing our sense of value. Meet the NFT, or non-fungible token, a digital certificate of ownership for a piece of art, music, or other online content. The market for the technology as of last year has skyrocketed to $41 billion. People are paying money, and in some cases millions of dollars, for a certificate of ownership that only exists as a computer code. Jason Bellini explains why.
To understand NFTs, let's start with blockchain. That's the technology that NFTs rely on. A blockchain is a digital ledger that tracks everyone who has ever owned a digital asset. For a traditional piece of art, a museum or auction house generally authenticates the piece and who owns it. But NFTs don't rely on a central authority like that. They're certificates of ownership that are instead authenticated on the blockchain. The blocks are stored as a permanent record of ownership across millions of computers. NFT stands for non-fungible token. Token is what digital assets on a blockchain are called. Non-fungible just means each one is unique. Almost any digital item can be made into an NFT. Last year, Twitter founder Jack Dorsey sold his very first tweet as an NFT for a whopping $2.9 million. Musicians including Grimes and the Rolling Stones have issued NFTs, earning millions in this new revenue stream. But most NFTs are digital artworks. An early sale was by an artist named Beeple. He sold digital NFTs and some physical tokens and made $3.5 million at an auction. Even extremely common images have sold as NFTs. The beloved Nyan Cat has been copied millions of times in text messages, tweets, and Instagram messages. But last year, someone bought an NFT of the iconic animation for $580,000. Now, you might be wondering, why do artworks of NFTs go for millions when anyone can go online and screenshot or download a copy of the original piece? It's a good question, but people wonder about the appropriate value of physical art, too. In 2017, a Japanese billionaire bought an untitled painting by Jean-Michel Basquiat for $110.5 million. But anyone could download a digital copy of the painting for free, right? Buying an NFT means you're the confirmed owner of a digital item. And in an increasingly digital world, some people are willing to pay millions to have that privilege, even if others think it's ephemeral. So digital artists who might have previously struggled to sell their work online now have a whole new way to make money when they create an NFT. Some NFTs even give artists a small share of the subsequent sales. So if the item gains value in the future, the original artist can make more money. Meanwhile, NFTs offer fans creative new ways to buy art they like. Some NFTs allow shared ownership. Digital artist Pack sold individual shares of a digital artwork called Merge to nearly 29,000 collectors. Each buyer received one or more share of the piece. Pack earned a total of $92 million on the sale, which explains why so many artists are now flocking to get in on this new, unpredictable market. For Newsy, I'm Jason Bellini.
Our next guest wrote the guide on NFT law for creators and collectors. She's also a Penn State Law Professor. Welcome to the show, Tonya Evans. We're glad you're here with us.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited. You're talking about my favorite topic, so I'm happy to be here.
Okay, so our show is about understanding and the why behind the headlines. NFTs are in the headlines. It recently started gaining momentum in more mainstream ways. And I want to bring up this example to you because just last week I logged onto Twitter, and before I could see my own feed, this notice popped up asking me if I wanted to choose an NFT option for my profile picture. And I just kind of went, wait, what? And I can only imagine how many people got that same type of notification thinking, what is an NFT? So you're the expert. How I understand this is kind of like Picasso had his signature that we use to authenticate that his art is an original. So we can now have our own work authenticated with an NFT to copyright our own stuff. Do I have that right? Like, break that down for us.
You have a lot of good stuff in there, but let's make it all make sense. I like your example of physical art because I think it's a really important way to understand how this digital art revolution is really starting to materialize. The non-fungible token is what NFT stands for. In order to really understand at a very plain level what that means, is to understand fungibility. If you have $1, it doesn't matter which dollar you actually have, even though they all have serial numbers, because they all have the same value. Your example with a Picasso, the Picasso is unique. And even if you have 1,000 prints of it, that original is the original. It's unique. It's one. It's the only. It's the same thing like a house or land. And so that makes it really, really important to understand the value in NFTs as being unique and therefore not interchangeable, non-fungible. Taking that to the next level is also understanding that the token is representing some connection, either ownership or some rights over something else that is attached to and referenced by the token. So the token in and of itself isn't the art, but it is referencing and showing that you are connected, that you are the owner or you have certain rights to it. What does that mean? A rough analogy is the deed to a house. The deed is not the house, but it's my ability to evidence my ownership and or connection to it, or maybe if I had at least some rights attached to it. And so we can start to unpack what all that means. That is a final point separate and apart from this idea of copyright, which protects the actual artwork. Not the token itself, but the artwork in the same way that we have physical art or any literary or artistic work that is original and capable of being copied. And so hopefully that starts to unpack the difference between the token, the art that it's connected to and referenced to with, and also the separate rights attached to a creative work that aren't necessarily transferred when someone buys a non-fungible token.
So why do we need the NFTs?
It's the difference between, this is the perfect question because so many people are like, it's a JPEG, right? So why do I need an NFT if I can just go online and download a JPEG? And the point is well made. I liken it back to the real estate example. You can either take a picture of my house or you can own my house. And the choice is yours. You can drive by. I prefer that you not. But you can drive by, you can take a picture of it, you can take your picture and put it on a mug and t-shirts and all of those things. Or you could have the value of the thing that is being referenced by the token in the same way that, again, the deed would be connected to a home. And also with blockchain technology, which essentially is just a record that cannot be destroyed or replicated, that cannot be destroyed, that shows who the owner is at any given time, when something was created, who the subsequent transferor is, and all the way down the line, in the same way that the record of deeds is recorded, but in what we call immutable fashion, so it can't be undone. So that's really powerful evidence of who owns what at any given time. And also, final point, the value that is ascribed to something that is rare. Something that's rare and in demand, the value necessarily goes up. And so that's some part of the difference between fungibility and non-fungibility as well.
So let me get to blockchain here in a second, but let me ask you, for the average person like you and me, when and how does this come into play in our everyday lives?
It's interesting because so many brands are starting to get into the NFT game. They have this rich, treasure trove of copyrighted information. We see it in the context of NBA Top Shot. I've seen all sorts of brands starting to get into the game in order to really create whole new value stream for things that are really sitting on the proverbial digital shelf that maybe people don't have access to or interest in, but now they can reframe it and resell it as either a one-for-one or a limited edition. Another thing and another way that we as average people can engage with NFTs, with brands in particular, is the fan engagement that is coming from it. For example, a company like a Ticketmaster that wants to cut down on scalping. They have an immutable record. a 1-for-1 for a ticket. And when you hold the NFT to a ticket, it gives you entrance into a venue, for example. It may also give you a unique fan experience, a behind the scenes, if you have the first one of 100, for example. And so it really opens up this idea of collectibles and value, fan engagement, and added experience over the lifetime of that token.
Okay, you mentioned blockchain earlier. Let's talk about that a little bit. It is very complicated for a lot of people to grasp what blockchain is and then how it's used with NFTs.
Blockchains are literal digital, what we call ledgers or records of transactions and balances. That's all it is. And it's a way that instead of having centralized information, let me use the example of a bank just to go to regular cryptocurrencies, not NFTs. Mm-hmm. If I, and to take a step back to dollars and cents, if I have a check, remember those, I'm not sure everybody does, but this thing, or little physical thing, we write down the money and send it to someone, evidently. If I had $100 in the bank, and I sent you a check for $100 and someone else a check for $100, the first person to actually cashes it wins, right? You can't do that with blockchain because it's a 1-for-1 record that can't be changed. It cuts down on what we call the double spend problem, a problem where you have $100, but you send 2 checks for $100 out. So blockchains are really just digital records, digital ledgers. My bank has a digital ledger that it says, this is what Tonya has in terms of her transactions and balances today. Your bank has the same thing. Now, instead of a bank running it and have a centralized record of information, it's a record that is maintained digitally via software by a network of computers. That makes people nervous because they're like, what happens if a computer goes down? If a computer goes down, the information still persists. And that's part of the power and the promise of blockchain technology that maintains records of transactions and balances, and it is verified across a network of computers. So in the case of a natural disaster or a rogue actor at the government level, for example, they can't overtake the network and the system, and that is very, very empowering, and it's a different way from the Web 2.0 that we're used to.
I'm curious whether you think this is just the absolute game changer. A young artist can create an NFT to offer their digital work at a price they choose, right? What impact does this have at large?
Such a game changer in the same way that cryptocurrencies have upended the financial system to really leverage peer-to-peer technology so that you and I can exchange value without what we call an intermediary, the bank or someone else that gives us permission to exchange value, and also charges a premium for the privilege of trusting them because we may not trust each other. Now, instead, we just trust the code that can be verified. That happened in the financial realm, and the same impact is happening on the artistic side, where now think of so many quote-unquote starving artists who don't have access to the financial side of art because of this distinction between fine art and commercial art, and the ability now for an artist to go directly to this whole new world, not just where they live, but anyone around the world who sees value in their art can actually pay them directly. That is a game changer.
Okay, Tonya Evans, your insight is so valuable on this topic. Thank you so much for helping us understand and break down what I think a lot of people are still trying to wrap their minds around. Thank you for coming on the show tonight.
Thank you.